For a long time, I told myself I had simply done what an honest person does. I stopped pretending. I stopped performing the role of a woman who was satisfied with a marriage that had gone quiet in all the wrong ways. What I did not account for was how thoroughly Mike had already been accounting for everything else. Every visit, every date, every timestamp on a record I didn't know existed. I thought I was the one who saw clearly. I thought I was the one who left. The truth is more specific and considerably less flattering than that. My name is Anna Mercer. I am 34 years old and I work in marketing strategy, the kind of job where you learn to read what a room needs before it knows it needs anything. I am good at it. People find me interesting at dinner tables. I have opinions and I share them, and I know how to hold a conversation. On most days, that version of myself feels completely true. The version that sits at the kitchen table for 40 minutes, staring at a campaign brief without reading a single line. That one I keep quieter. It is a Monday morning when the gap between the two becomes too wide to ignore. Mike comes out of the study carrying his own coffee in a plain white mug and sets the chipped ceramic one down in front of me without saying a word. I look at it. The chip is on the left side of the handle, a small scallop I used to touch without thinking. He bought that mug 8 years ago at a craft fair because I picked it up and said I liked the weight. I said it once in passing, and he remembered it for 8 years and has been making my coffee in it almost every morning since. I sit with this for a moment the way you sit with something you have stopped knowing what to do with. He comes back through a few minutes later and asks, gently, whether I am doing all right. He says I have seemed somewhere else for the past few days and he wants to check. He is not accusing me of anything. He is standing near the counter with his mug, and he is asking a simple question. I tell him it is just work. A campaign deadline. Before he leaves, he stops at the hook by the door where he keeps his keys and says my name. Just that. When I look up, he says only that being in the same apartment means something to him, and he would rather know I am actually there with him than wonder at it from across the room. He says this without pressure, without drama. He smiles. He leaves. That evening I tell him I am having dinner with Priya. I am not having dinner with Priya. I meet Bob, Mike's closest friend since university, at a restaurant near Mike's office. We talk for 2 hours. He asks what I am actually working on and waits for the real answer. He disagrees with something I say about a campaign approach and explains his reasoning carefully. He looks at me while I talk. On the drive home, I think, this is what paying attention looks like. I have not felt it in 8 months. I come in after 10. The apartment is quiet. Mike is in bed. The chipped ceramic mug is in the drying rack, washed and set there for morning. He has done this for so long that I stopped seeing it as something someone chooses to do. I turn the kitchen light off. My phone buzzes on the counter. It is Bob. The message says only, tomorrow. 3 weeks later, the lie is a habit, and the habit has its own grammar. I tell Mike I am at Priya's. I am at Bob's apartment, 2 neighborhoods over, on a lower floor with a window that faces a courtyard. I expected the first full lie to feel like something. A weight, a sharpening, some physical signal that I had crossed from one place into another. Instead, it came out of my mouth the way long-practiced things come out, without friction, which is the part I do not think about. What I find with Bob is not what I expected to find. It is not excitement or novelty in the simple sense. It is the specific feeling of being studied. He asks my actual opinions and waits for genuine answers. He remembers the specific thing I said 3 weeks ago at a group dinner and finds it more interesting than anything I have said since. He argues with me about ideas and expects me to defend my position. I have not been treated like a person whose views are worth disagreeing with in a long time, and the difference between that and what I have at home, the pleasant, distant face across the kitchen, feels like the difference between being in a room with the lights on and in a room where they have been going dim for so long, you forgot it used to be brighter. On a Tuesday, I come home close to midnight. Mike is on the couch, which is unusual. He is almost always in the study by that hour. He has a book open. He looks up when I come in. I say that Priya's apartment is always so warm that I had more wine than I meant to. He says okay. There is a pause before he asks whether I am all right. I say I am fine, and I go to the bathroom and then to bed. And that is the first time the lie is not an omission or a reframing, but a complete and finished false account of an evening that happened differently. He does not let it settle quietly. A few mornings later, he sits down across from me at the kitchen table and names 3 specific evenings, with dates. He says he came home on a Tuesday and a Thursday and a Friday to a lamp on in the kitchen and no one else in the apartment, and he has been noticing. He says this without accusation. He watches his words carefully, and I watch his face carefully for something to push back against and cannot find it. He says he has been noticing that I seem lighter when I come home from Priya's, but not happy exactly, something different, and that he misses me. He says this last part simply, like a plain fact. I hear surveillance behind it. I tell him I did not know we had a curfew. I say it is nice that he has noticed I exist. I say the apartment has felt heavy for months, and if I seem lighter when I come home, maybe that is information worth paying attention to. I let the last sentence sit in the air between us and wait to see what he does with it. He takes his coffee back to the study. He does not raise his voice. What he does next, he does quietly. He comes back through the kitchen about 20 minutes later and stops near the counter, near the hook where his keys hang, the ceramic mug still on the table between us, and says that he is not trying to track me. He says he is trying to understand what has shifted, because what happens in this apartment between the two of us matters to how they both live, how they are seen, what they are to each other in front of the people who know them. He says this steadily, and then he waits. He is giving me a chance to say something real. The space he is leaving for it is exact and patient. I say it is just a difficult stretch at work. He nods. He goes back to the study. I sit alone at the kitchen table for 20 minutes with the chipped mug in front of me. 2 days later, I sit across from Priya at a coffee shop near her neighborhood. She has been covering for me without asking what I am doing with the time her alibi creates. She is good at this, and she knows she is good at it, and there is something in her eyes when we talk about it that is not entirely worry. She asks me directly, "What am I doing?" Not in moral judgment. She genuinely wants to understand the shape of whatever this is. I describe what my evenings were before. Mike in the study, me on the couch, the television on for background, both of us in the same room separately. I say I have been lonely in my own apartment for 8 months. Priya says she knows. She says she believes me. She says she will cover for me. Then she says she needs me to know she thinks this ends badly. I tell her I know. Then I say something that I can tell she is going to remember. I say I am just making sure it ends on my terms. A week later, Bob sends me a screenshot, a concert out of the city a specific weekend. He says, "This one?" I stare at the screen. He is making plans that include me. He is looking ahead, at me, with intention. I say yes before I have thought about what I am saying yes to. Priya hosts dinner on a Saturday in October. 8 people around a table she has pushed closer to the window to make room. 3 couples, and then Anna and Mike, and then Bob arriving alone with a bottle of wine he sets on the kitchen counter. A specific label, not a generic choice. It is the one I mentioned once weeks ago, saying I had only had it once and liked it. I had said it in passing. He remembered it. I look at the bottle. I look across the room at Mike, who is helping Priya carry the starter plates without being asked, reaching around the table in that automatic way he has. The quiet competence of a person who moves through a room by noticing what is needed. I used to find this steadying. I tell myself I have stopped finding it anything. I arrange the seating so that Bob is beside me and Mike is directly across. I tell myself this was about the table geometry. The conversation is easy for the first hour. Shared gossip, recent news. the comfortable movement of a group that has known each other long enough not to have to perform much. I have a glass of wine and then another. The lighting is warm. I can feel the evening gathering in my chest, some combination of anticipation and readiness that I choose not to examine too closely. Someone at the far end of the table mentions a mutual couple who recently separated. People we all knew, now done. The group does the usual: sympathy, analysis, the half-remembered warnings everyone claims to have had all along. I begin talking. I say I understand it, actually. I say I think a lot of marriages reach a point where both people are more committed to the performance of being married than to each other. I am not looking at Mike. I am not looking at Bob. I am looking at a point slightly above and between them, addressing the table at large, and my voice has the fluency of someone who has rehearsed this internally for weeks while presenting it as spontaneous. I say I have spent a long time making myself smaller to fit inside someone else's comfort zone. I say I have been reminded lately what it feels like to be around people who are genuinely interested in who I am. The table goes slightly quieter. Two people at the far end exchange a look I do not register at the time. Mike asks whether anyone wants more wine. He stands. He takes 4 glasses back to the kitchen. He returns and has a brief, ordinary conversation with the man to his left about something that has nothing to do with what I just said. He never raises his voice. He never looks at me with any expression that could be read as anything at all. I watch him move through the room and think, this is exactly what I mean. Later, I go to Priya's bathroom. I run cold water in the sink and stand there for a moment. I am performing something. I know this in a clear and specific way, but for approximately 40 seconds, I do not know exactly what I am performing, or whether it is what I intended. My chest feels like a question rather than an answer. I run my wrists under the water. I take a breath. By the time I come back to the table, whatever passed through me is sealed back up. After dinner, Mike finds me near the kitchen before we leave. He speaks quietly enough that only I can hear, near the counter where Bob's wine bottle is still sitting. He asks whether there is something I want to tell him, because what happened at the table tonight was noticeable, and the people at Priya's are people they both know and have known for years. He says he is not asking to argue. He is asking because the way a couple looks to shared friends is real, and what I said tonight has a shape to it that he would like the chance to understand. I tell him I was just being honest about how I feel. He says, still quietly, that honesty between the two of them would have been a better place to start, that the table was not the first place he should have heard any of that, and that what I said in front of their friends is now part of how those friends are going to read whatever happens next. He does not say this with anger. He says it the way you state a fact about weather. In the elevator on the way down, Bob stands beside me. Through the lobby glass, I can see Mike on the sidewalk, waiting for the car, hands in his pockets, looking at his phone. He does not look up. I watch him for 4 seconds. The elevator doors close. Bob says I was great tonight. I say I know. I almost mean it. 3 days later, a woman I have met twice at Mike's work events stops me at the coffee shop 2 blocks from our building. She says carefully that whatever is going on, something from that dinner got back to people at the office. She says it and leaves it there. I smile and say that people always talk. I pay for my coffee and go outside. I hold the cup with both hands. My hands are not warm enough. I keep the phone to my ear long enough that the barista glances over, then looks away again, as if there is an etiquette to witnessing someone suspended in a moment they have not yet decided how to exit. When I finally lower it, nothing in the room has changed, which feels incorrect. There should be some visible shift to mark that something has moved, that a line has been crossed or at least approached. Instead, there is the same low hum of conversation, the same clink of cups, the same person at the corner table scrolling through something that holds their attention more completely than anything currently holds mine. I tell myself that this is still manageable, that nothing definitive has happened, that a phone call is not an action so much as a question, and questions can remain unanswered longer than people expect. I focus on that distinction, on the space between what is known and what is provable, on how much can exist in that space if it is handled carefully. I finish my coffee without tasting it. I consider calling Priya back to ask what exactly he sounded like, whether there was anything in his tone that suggested certainty rather than curiosity. I do not call her back. I do not want to hear an answer that closes something I am still using. Outside, the air has that particular quality it takes on in late afternoon when the light has begun to thin but has not yet committed to leaving. I walk to my car and sit in it without starting the engine. There is a text from Priya, just a single line, no punctuation, the kind of message that could be casual or could be urgent, depending entirely on what I bring to it. I read it twice. I do not respond. I place the phone face down on the passenger seat and watch a woman cross the parking lot, carrying 2 bags and a child's jacket draped over her arm. And I think about how many small, ordinary things a person can do in the space between receiving information and deciding what it means. I start the car. I drive the route home that takes 7 minutes longer, the one that follows the curve of the reservoir where the houses thin out, and there is a brief stretch with no buildings at all, just water and the darkening line of trees on the far bank. I have taken this route before when I needed to arrive somewhere later than I otherwise would, not because of what I would find when I got there, but because of what I would need to be when I walked through the door. It is a form of preparation that looks, from the outside, like nothing at all, just a woman driving a slightly longer way home. I think about Priya's voice on the phone, the specific register she uses when she is being careful, when she has information she considers significant but does not want to be the one who assigns it weight. She had said his name, and then she had paused. And in that pause I had understood that whatever came next was something she had considered not telling me. People do that. They hold a piece of knowledge up to the light, turn it, try to determine whether passing it along is an act of loyalty or an act of disruption. Priya had decided it was loyalty. I am not yet sure she was right. The reservoir is flat and dark. There is a single light on the far shore, probably someone's porch, and it holds steady in a way that feels almost deliberate, as though it has been placed there specifically so that someone driving past would have a point of reference against which to measure the gathering dark. I watch it until the road curves away, and then it is gone, and I am back among houses and streetlights and the small visible lives of other people, lit windows, parked cars, the blue flicker of screens in living rooms. When I get home, Mike is in the kitchen. He is standing at the counter, cutting something with precise, even movements. There is a rhythm to it that feels practiced, or perhaps newly practiced, as though he has decided that certain motions will anchor him if he repeats them enough times. He looks up when I come in, and there is a brief moment where I try to read his face the way I always have, quickly, confidently, assuming there is something there that will reveal itself, if I look correctly. There is less there than I expect. Or rather, there is something there that does not arrange itself into anything I can easily interpret. "How was your day?" he asks, and it is a normal question in a normal tone. "Fine," I say. I set my bag down. I do not offer anything additional, and he does not ask. We move around each other in the kitchen with a coordination that has been built over years. Small adjustments, unspoken allowances, the kind of choreography that suggests familiarity more than closeness. At one point, our hands nearly touch when reaching for the same drawer, and both of us pause for a fraction of a second before adjusting course. It is subtle enough that it could be nothing. It does not feel like nothing. I notice the cutting board is new. Or not new exactly, but one I have not seen him use before. Heavier, darker wood. The kind of thing someone buys when they have decided to take a particular task more seriously than they previously did. I do not ask about it. There are categories of observation that once spoken become questions, and questions between us have begun to carry a weight that makes them difficult to set down once lifted. So I note it, file it alongside the other small shifts: the rearranged shelf in the hallway closet, the book on the nightstand that is not the kind of book he has read before, the fact that he has started sleeping with the window open even though he has always preferred it closed. None of these things are significant on their own. Together they form something that is not quite a pattern, but is no longer random. At dinner he tells me about something inconsequential from work. I listen. I respond in the right places. I notice that he is choosing details that require minimal follow-up, statements that close themselves off before they can be expanded. I mirror this without deciding to. There is a moment between his description of a meeting that went longer than expected and his comment about the rain forecast for tomorrow, where he stops. Not a dramatic stop. Not a gathering of breath before something important. Just a cessation. A brief gap in the rhythm, as though he has reached the edge of what he prepared to say and has not yet decided whether to step into whatever lies beyond it. I watch him across the table. He picks up his glass, drinks, sets it down. The moment passes. He asks if I want more water. I say no. The evening continues as though nothing has stalled, as though the machinery of it never briefly ceased before resuming its ordinary motion. After we eat, he clears the table. I watch him for a moment longer than necessary, then stand and begin rinsing the dishes. We do not discuss the call to Priya. We do not discuss the study, or the second laptop, or the fact that something has shifted into a shape neither of us is naming yet. Later, when we are in separate rooms, I think about what he said, that suggesting therapy without wanting it is its own kind of decision. I turn that over, not as an accusation but as a framework. Decisions do not always look like actions. Sometimes they look like delays, like careful positioning, like the maintenance of ambiguity long past the point where it is neutral. I think about the woman in the parking lot with the child's jacket over her arm. I think about how she walked without hesitation, how her trajectory was clean and direct, how there was no visible negotiation between where she was and where she was going. I try to remember the last time I moved through a space like that, without calculating, without adjusting for what might be observed or inferred. I cannot locate a specific instance, which does not mean it has not happened. It means only that I have lost access to the version of myself who would have noticed it, who would have done it without noticing at all. My phone is still face down on the dresser where I placed it when I came upstairs. Priya's message is still unread in the sense that matters, acknowledged but not answered, received but not acted upon. There is a half-life to these things. A message unanswered for an hour is casual. Unanswered for a day, it becomes a choice. Unanswered for longer, it becomes a statement, and I am not yet ready to make one. I lie in bed and consider the possibility that time is not something I can stretch indefinitely, that it might instead be narrowing in ways that are harder to perceive until they are already in place. I do not come to a conclusion. I do not move toward one. In the other room I can hear him shift once, then settle again. I bring Priya to Bob's apartment on a Thursday afternoon without fully explaining why. The reason, which I do not say out loud, is that I need a witness. I need someone in the next room, someone audible as the occasional sound of movement, someone who will be able to confirm later that this happened and that I said it. In the living room, with Priya in the next room and Bob across from me on the couch, I tell Bob that I am leaving Mike. I say it out loud and on purpose. I say I have never made a choice that was actually for myself. And I say, this is it. Bob says, okay. He says it warmly. But the warmth has a slightly administrative quality. It is the warmth of someone beginning to organize the logistics of a situation, rather than the warmth of someone who has been waiting to hear this. He says they will figure things out. I register that his response is about next steps. I store this in a place I will not look at for another 2 weeks. I believe for the length of the drive home that I have done something brave. The belief is clean and real and lasts exactly that long. I park in the building garage. I sit in the car for a moment. I go up. I am packing a weekend bag in the bedroom when I hear the front door. 40 minutes early. I know it is Mike from the sound of his keys on the hallway hook. That specific sound in that specific order. The way you know a thing you have heard several hundred times. I keep packing. He appears in the doorway. He sees the bag. He stands there for 3 full seconds without speaking. Then he asks one question. He asks what he did specifically that I could not have simply told him. He says, "Give me one concrete thing," and he will tell me whether he knew about it. He is standing in the doorway of their bedroom with the bag between us and the keys still in his hand, and he is asking with the exactness of someone who has spent a long time preparing to ask something exactly this specific. I say, "You stopped wanting to be here. You kept the house. You kept the schedule. You kept me. But you stopped wanting any of it." He says he kept everything because he wanted to, not out of habit. He says this quietly, without strategy, standing in the doorway. I say I know he believes that. He offers 1 week. He says if I stay for 1 week where they actually speak to each other, not logistics, not surface, he will say everything he has not been saying. He says this in the most unguarded way I have seen from him in 8 months, and I hear it clearly. I do not let it in. I tell him the problem is that he has waited until I am already leaving to offer what I needed before I decided to go. I say 1 week does not change what the last 8 months were. I say, you cannot hand someone a map after they have already left the city. I zip the bag. I walk past him in the doorway. From the hallway behind me, he says once, without anger, without volume, that he is going to handle this properly. That is all. I do not turn around. I pick up my bag. The keys are still on the hook. I do not take them. I go to the elevator. In the car, 20 minutes later, I call Bob. He answers on the 4th ring. There is background noise, voices or a television, something. I tell him I am on my way to Priya's. I tell him I did it. He says he is proud of me. He says they will talk properly tomorrow. I say, tonight though. He says he has something he cannot cancel. He says tomorrow, definitely. I put the phone on the passenger seat. The streetlights pass overhead in rhythm. I name what I am feeling as tiredness. I do not look at where it is coming from. I call Priya twice from the car. I reconstruct the bedroom conversation with a fluency that surprises me. Back at the apartment, Mike turns the lights off. He is in bed by 10. He does not call anyone. 3 blocks from Priya's apartment, my phone lights up with a calendar notification from a shared account I forgot to unlink. The alert shows a meeting entry. Mike Mercer, consultation, rescheduled, 9:30 Wednesday morning. No further detail. I read it at a red light. I read it a second time. I drive the remaining 3 blocks. In the morning, when I look at it again, I tell myself it could be about anything. I say this several times before I stop saying it. The mediation office is on the 2nd floor of a building near the Civic Centre. A conference table, 2 chairs on one side and one on the other. A mediator with a legal pad and a measured expression. I walk in expecting to begin discussing separation terms. I walk in expecting a neutral space where things are still unresolved. The mediator opens the session by telling me that a formal divorce petition was filed with the court 3 days ago by Mike's attorney. Temporary orders are already attached. Mike is named as primary resident of the apartment pending the proceeding. A first hearing date is printed on the document. The petition is placed on the table. I say I thought this was mediation. The mediator says it still can be. I can participate in the mediated process alongside the legal proceeding. But the petition has been submitted. It is done. There is a supplementary file attached. The building's key code access log shows Bob's individual entry code used on 14 specific dates over a 6-week period, all during Mike's established work hours, all while Mike's car was absent from the garage. The doorbell camera timestamps for those dates are attached as a supporting exhibit. I look at the dates. I count them. There is no version of this I can describe as deliveries. I tell the mediator that I understand how the documentation appears, but that the marriage had been emotionally over for nearly a year before any of this, and that Mike's own withdrawal was part of what led to everything that followed. I say this clearly, and I believe some of it. The mediator listens. Then she explains, without unkindness, that emotional difficulty within a marriage does not affect the legal standing of the petition. She says the documentation is clear, and the question now is how I wish to proceed. She is not cruel. She is not movable either. I sit for a moment without speaking. This is the first time in the entire length of this situation that I have nothing to reach for. I move into a one-room sublet, 2 neighborhoods from the apartment. The window faces the wall of the building next door. I unpack 2 boxes and leave the rest stacked near the door. The joint account is restricted while assets divide. The number in my account is roughly what it has always been. It looks different without a shared life around it. The same number, a smaller container. Most of our mutual friends become gradually unavailable in the particular way of people who have already made a decision, but would prefer not to have to say it directly. Bob needs space to figure out his own situation. He sends this in a long message, 3.5 weeks after the mediation. I read it twice and do not ask him to clarify. The chipped ceramic mug is near the top of the second box in the corner of the room. I took it when I packed. I have not unpacked it. What I believed gave me power, leaving first, controlling the story, making sure I could never be caught waiting, is the same thing that left me in a room with no architecture around it and a document on a conference table I did not know was coming. Mike chose me quietly, in specific and repeated ways for 8 years. I read his grief as indifference. I mistook his endurance for absence. The man I was most afraid of not being chosen by turns out to have been the one in this story who was choosing me the longest.